let's start at the beginning. I really dig women. My mother was a woman. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, right? So she had some profound things going on in her life that I was just an observer on, and I didn't fully appreciate because I was, a youngster at the time, and didn't fully grasp the magnitude of the strength of my mother. And as I aged and got to work with women and enjoy life, I could see how my mother impacted me in many, many ways. And that's what promoted me to write books about women. I've interviewed 62 women and wrote about them in the books. And by the way, if you are so inclined to want a copy of the book, I would encourage you not to buy it through Amazon. Amazon will charge you $55 and send me $1. Don't do it. What I would suggest you do instead is the books go for, I will sell them for $40 each. And if you make the check payable to the Fresh Start Foundation, then 100% of the proceeds go to that organization. And Fresh Start is an organization that is specifically designed to help women finish their education. So it's very inspiring, and they do some terrific work. As a matter of fact, one of the women that I wrote about in the book, her name is Mary Maloney. She started the Fresh Start Scholarship Foundation, gosh, I think about 25 or 30 years ago, and has been quietly behind the scenes assisting women from all walks of life who've had some rather, in many cases, awful family situations that interrupted their educational process, and they never got back to it. So the Fresh Start is all about making sure that those women not only get a scholarship to complete their education, but what really impresses me about that particular organization, most of the women involved in the organization mentor the scholars to make sure that they succeed. So putting those two things together just blew me away. Let me get a sip here, I'm getting dry. I'd like to tell you a couple of stories of the women that I wrote about. One that comes to mind because I think Emma was kind enough to zero in on a couple of the names. Tatiana Copeland, who is an extraordinarily wealthy woman, and an extraordinary woman without her wealth, because she gets things done. She's quite accomplished. And in writing the stories about the women, I wanted to get back to their roots as to how did they get from point A to point B. And I'm here to tell you, in practically every one of those stories, it wasn't easy. It was hard work. Many of the women came from awful, awful situations. Tatiana did not have an awful situation with the last name of Copeland. As you can pick up, she's married to the Copelands. And but what is interesting about Tatiana, she is an accountant, a CPA, besides speaking 7 languages. Not bad. I'm struggling with 1. She speaks 7, but she tells the story in the book about being drafted, so to speak, to work with a Russian team, government team, to facilitate some contractual things that our government wanted to do with the Russians. And what the Russians, as you probably, they're famous for, shall we say, imbibing, celebrating, drinking. That's it, drinking, that's what it is. And sure enough, during this meeting that she was attending, where they were trying to get some contract negotiations completed, they did their best to, shall we say, make her very happy. They kept on passing the booze. She took no drinks whatsoever. And because she speaks Russian, she went through line by line all these agreements at this event, and found a lot of things in there that, shall we say, were opportunities for improvement in the documentation. So she's She's one of my heroes, Tatiana. Betsy Leroy, here in Delaware. Show of hands, anybody here of Pizza by Elizabeth? Okay, Pizza by Elizabeth. Two ladies decided they were going to enter the restaurant business. Didn't know a clue about it. They went to a restaurant equipment place in Ellesmere, in Delaware. And the gentleman who was trying to help them did his best to try and talk them out of opening a restaurant. Well, they weren't having it. They opened it anyway, and they become fabulously successful. And it's Pizza by Elizabeth. Actually, it's Betty and Betsy. And Betsy has now taken the reins of the business, as Betty, the other partner, has withdrawn from the business. So it's still going extraordinarily well. Tina Betts told the story, and she's a prominent Wilmington government person, of taking ballet lessons. And she went to New York City. She was going to try out for this big ballet. And she was literally on the stage, getting ready to try out. She froze, walked off the stage, and never competed. And she's learned a lot of that, learned a lot from that. You know, we learn from our mistakes. We learn from our successes. Another one of my favorites is a lady by the name of Lisa Farner. Lisa Farner is not a household name. Her husband, Mark Farner, the band that he was in at a certain time was a household name. You may have heard of the name of a band called Grand Funk Railroad. Anybody heard of that name before? Okay, nobody. Oh, I see Kim. Kim raised her hand. Okay, Kim. So anyway, Lisa, married to Mark, a rock star, as you may imagine, can have its own can of worms, but they have been delightfully married and committed to each other now for over 40 years, I think. And Lisa was drafted into being the road manager for Mark's band as they were touring around the country. And she learned a lesson one time when one of the musicians was left behind at a bus stop. That's not good when you leave people behind. So they went back, they got the person, succeeded to the gig. But it was interesting to hear Lisa talk about some of the challenges of running rock shows and rock concerts and those kinds of things. A lady that just blew me away in the very, very beginning was a lady by the name of Darnell Jervey. Darnell tells the story that at her 8th birthday party, the nice policeman walked in and arrested her mother and took her to jail. Her father was already in prison. And Darnell has grown from that. Certainly, I would think no one would blame her for, you know, if we found her in an alleyway somewhere sucking her thumb after something like that. But she rose above it. And I'm going to share some of the things that they did to make themselves successful. But she's now a Mary Kay lady of epic proportions. She's in 7 figures. So she went from nothing, worse than nothing, to 7 figures, and she's running a business and just doing spectacularly well. Another friend of mine, Susan Hum. Susan was introduced to me by her dad because we were leaving church one day, and Dad invited us back to his house for dinner. The only problem was he only lived maybe 2 miles from the church, but he got lost on the way home after living at this place for over 40 years. So I called Susan when I got to the house and said, Susan, I'm here with your dad. He's okay, but I think he needs some help. She came down, and for like 6 months, she would come down from New York regularly to be with her dad. She eventually took her dad back to New York with him. And I never, you know, dug too much into her background, but she kept on saying, referring to her company. You know, her company doesn't allow this, doesn't allow that. She can't do this, can't do that. So finally, when I finally pulled it out of her, she admitted that she was a costume designer for the David Letterman show for 30 years. And through that, I got to meet some other interesting musicians and people as well. But Susan started in art school in Philadelphia and decided at a young age that she wanted to go to New York City. And somehow she found herself on the David Letterman show and remained there for 30 or 40 years until she retired, which that in of itself is a feat. Carla Markell, you may have heard that name, our First Lady. When I interviewed her, I was quite interested to see that this incredibly successful, dynamic, intelligent, fabulous woman came from very modest, humble beginnings with parents that gave her no boundaries. She said she was pretty much doing what she wanted to do, when she wanted to do it, for as long as she wanted to do it, and no discipline, and didn't get very good grades, didn't study well, wasn't a very good student, and she rose above it. So I have 62 stories similar to those. Some are gut-wrenching. Some of them are, well, gee, that's nice, kind of a thing. But I'd like to share with you what I've learned with some of those ladies. And I'm going to give you some ideas. And one of the ideas I want to give you right now is you should have a pen and a piece of paper handy, because I might say something brilliant and I amaze myself when I do that. So take some notes, because I want to, show of hands, who in this meeting wished to be successful? We had to think about that. Okay, that's all right. I'm going to give you some ideas to become even more successful, okay? What I learned from these women is they knew they had a sense of themselves. They knew they had value. I see strings through them, connecting the dots. They have discipline. They have determination. One of the things that kept on haunting me as I was interviewing these ladies is the old saying, if it's to be, it's up to me. So they realized that they had to do whatever it was and not rely on anybody else to do it for them. And as I was listening to all these traits and picking up on some of these traits that they didn't realize that they had, I developed a list of things that I think will help people become much more successful quicker. And I'd like to share some of those ideas with you. One of the first things I'd like to suggest to everybody that I meet is they should contact 5 or 10 of their friends and ask each one of them to write them back a letter expressing what they think their friends' unique abilities are. Their unique abilities. I can't tell you how important that is. And when those 5 or 10 people write you back that letter, I can assure you that there's not going to be too many surprises in there, because you have an idea of what your abilities are, but you don't know how unique you are. And by having someone tell you what your unique abilities are, your reaction, at least my first reaction when I did this analysis, I thought, well, that's no big deal. I have these unique abilities, but they're not a big deal. Well, let me tell you, they are a big deal. This is what makes you special. This is what makes you unique. And the reason why it's so important to have somebody tell you what your unique abilities are that you already know is that what I want you to do going forward is do those kinds of things that will make you better at your unique abilities. Don't worry about the things that you're not good at. How often do you wake up in the middle of the night and say, oh, I don't know how to do that, or I'm not quite sure if I can do this job, or whatever. that already tells me that you accepted the job perhaps you shouldn't have taken. But if you know your unique abilities and you continue to work on getting better at your unique abilities, then you find other people who are good at doing those things that you're not good at, because their unique abilities might be those things that you're not good at. And then when you suddenly bring those things together, holy cow, success. By the way, the definition of success is when preparation meets opportunity. When preparation and opportunity meet, you have success. So that's the first thing I want you to do. I want you to ask your friends what they think are your unique abilities. And again, you will not be stunned. And make sure you tell them you're not just fishing for compliments, because this is legitimate. This is a super idea. I can't tell you how important this was to me when I figured it out. And I did many of these things by accident before I met the ladies. And suddenly things started shaping up. I went, oh, and the lights started coming on. The other thing I want you to do is I want you to design the perfect job for you. What are the attributes of that job that would be absolutely the greatest thing for you, that not only would you wake up in the morning and say, instead of, oh, good God, I have to go into the office, you're going to say, oh, good God, I get to go in the office today because I get to go do those things that I'm unique at, that I'm very good at, and then start developing the attributes of the perfect job, which means that, you know, if you're not good with people, don't get into customer service. Some of this stuff is not rocket scientist stuff, but many times it's not that apparent until you actually sit down and do an inventory. And here's the next thing I want you to do, is do an inventory of your personal attributes. An inventory of your personal attributes. I did this by accident. And then I learned that the ladies kind of did this, but not intentionally. I was sitting in a hotel room in Connecticut, really unhappy with the job I had been in. So I sat there in my room, I had no interruptions, and I developed a list of personal attributes. And what was really interesting, and I think this might hit home with many of you, when I finally developed the list, I recalled quite vividly that there was a gentleman, a headhunter, who would follow me around when I was with this previous company consulting, and he would try to move me to another company. And I kept on saying, I don't know why you're calling me and with this stuff, but why is this company that I'm working with now your hunting ground? And he said, well, that company that you're in is called the Academy. And in spite of the fact that my average day was 18 hours, and I put in a couple of 23.5-hour days in this company, no overtime, just do it. I finally figured out at that time, oh, this headhunter said 1 year with that company was equivalent to 5 years with another company doing other things. So as I'm sitting there doing my attributes, my personal inventory, it suddenly dawned on me that I was a 30-year-old guy with 35 years of experience. My gosh. And the more I thought about that, I thought, well, I'm what every human resource director is looking for. But then I had another aha moment. Since I'd recognized that I'd been with some people in a company that worked outrageous hours, that I learned an incredible amount of stuff. And there were some very positive things to it. I also noticed that most of the people that were in my company could be broken up into 3 categories: divorced, alcoholics, or I suspect had drug problems. And I didn't want to be part of that. So when I did this inventory, I said, you know, I really do have a lot to offer, perhaps my next employer. But then the light came on. If I have that much to give, why should I sell it to somebody else, like my current employer where I was, and then allow that company, that person to, control me, steal my ideas, get credit for all my good things, pay me a pittance, and borderline abuse me? Nah. So I got the great idea to become an independent contractor and be in the work that I'm doing right now as an independent contractor. So if I hadn't have done those attributes, I wouldn't be where I am today, quite frankly. In addition to doing an inventory of your attributes, I want you to also do an inventory of your balance sheet every year. You got to figure out, are you gaining or are you losing? And if you do a balance sheet every year, you're keeping score. And if you're not keeping score, you're missing opportunities, I feel. And that's been proven to me too as well. The other thing, as I sat through a workshop many, many years ago, I went to LA to be part of this workshop put on by a professional football player. And during that weekend, he was keenly interested on us all developing that special experience that happened to us when we were a child. And as it turns out, there was probably 20 or 30 people there at that weekend event. And we hadn't considered those kinds of things. And this is why we seek other people to give us other ideas, to afford us opportunities to look at ourselves differently. The special event that occurred to me at that meeting was that when I was 14, I was getting ready to close my case on my saxophone for the last time and be done with it. And then my mother brought home an album. I did tell you my mother was very profound in my upbringing, right? I did mention that, yes. So this gentleman who played saxophone, who had this album, was a guy by the name of Boots Randolph. Anybody here ever heard that name, Boots Randolph? I see no hands, that's okay. I'd be willing to bet you know his song. That's Boots. You know the song, yes? It was a theme song to the Benny Hill TV show. Anyway, Boots not only was profound that day when my mother handed me his album, and I heard that song for the first time, but about 40 years later, Boots became a very good friend of mine. I performed with him on stage in the Grand Opera House 2 or 3 times. He became a client, and I was holding his hand in the Nashville hospital on July 3rd, 2007, when he took his last breath. So I've had some profound, incredible experiences just by being at the right place at the right time, knowing that I belong there. And if you don't do the attributes and the unique abilities, you sometimes may doubt, do you belong there? What do you have to offer? Checking my notes here. With the inventory, as if you can get detailed with your personal attributes, I can't tell you how important that is, because for the first time, if you're sitting there doing this inventory, you're not being interrupted. Who knows? You may have an aha moment where you've decided that you need to move on and do other things. Or if you're counseling people, which I believe that's part of what you do, is that not true? You counsel the people who come. I see you're looking at me. Somebody nod or shaking. Amanda, is that true or not? That's true. You counsel people, right? Well, I would also suggest to you that if you shared some of these ideas with the people that you counsel, you will make a big difference in their life, probably a profound difference, because nobody's ever taught them to do these things or the importance of doing these things. It's like get an education, get a job, start a family, and that's it. But there's a whole lot more to life than just that. Do you have any questions so far? I need a drink of coffee.
Can you talk a little bit more about the inventory of your balance sheet? Maybe give an example of that?
Yes. Since I'm a financial kind of a guy, I know that answer. On your balance sheet, you need to actually list, and at least once a year, and if not, a couple times a year, you do a balance sheet that shows how much is in your checking account, how much is in your 401k, what's the value of your car, what's the value of your clothes, what's the value of your unique things that you own at home. So that you have a score sheet, if you will, because that will dictate later on, especially if you need some special estate planning things done because your assets have grown so much that you want to protect it, your legacy, to make sure that it goes to your heirs. And again, before it gets to being obscenely large, I must warn you, I am the past president of the Wilmington Optimist Club. And as such, my glass is always half full. And I see a bunch of names and faces on here of people who I think will be tremendously successful if you do the right things at the right time for the right reasons. And a balance sheet is, I did that for the very first time in my hotel room. And you're gonna love this story. I had an aha moment that I suddenly determined that I had a negative net worth. I was $47,000 in the hole when I was 30 years of age. And if I hadn't have done that balance sheet and recognized that, I would have said, oh, I got some credit card debt, I got a mortgage, and I got a car loan, and those kinds of things. And you also have to record those. And by the way, if you have credit card debt, this is what I want you to do. Pay it off every month. Do not carry credit card balances. Just saying. Because I just heard a commercial where the average American is paying 19% on the credit card balances that you carry. That will eat you alive. And I didn't realize it until I did my own personal net worth of a minus $47,000, that credit card debt was eating me alive. So all these other things that I did in my hotel room by myself started to come together to tell me that I needed to make a big change, because the company that I was working for at the time in my 30s was paying me about $17,000 a year. And with $47,000 of debt, I wasn't going to dig myself out of that hole anytime soon. So it prompted me to take control of my life and not let others tell me what to do, and have others tell me what they think is better for me. Because once you analyze your own self and get these details down, you will suddenly have a new appreciation for yourself. You really will. And then I want you to visit those unique ability letters that you get from your friends, and only ask friends who know you very well for those letters. You need to review those letters probably once or twice a year, particularly when you're having a bad day, because they will pull you up. They will give you some positivity in a world of negativity. And I can only say, and I hate, please excuse me if this sounds like bragging, because I loathe bragging, but I've gone from a negative net worth of $47,000 to being a multimillionaire. Dang, I never would have imagined that I could have done something like that. Of course, my job now is making other people millionaires. And that's a lot of fun too. But I never in my wildest imaginations ever thought. And the reason I got into this business, you know, in in America, the adage is find a need and fill it. It's simple, easy. Find a need and fill it. And when my mother passed away, right about the same time I was working for this crazy company, I was sitting in the attorney's office and he pushes a check over to my side of the table in the amount of $30,000, which was more money than I'd ever seen in my entire life at that time. Remember, I told you I was only making $17,000 a year. And I looked at him and I said, what'll I do with this? And he kind of shrugged. It's not like he said, go talk to this financial guy or go see this banker or whatever. Even he didn't know what to do. So as I was walking out of his office, I was thinking, you know, people die every day. These problems pop up all the time. I think I found the need. Now all I have to do is start to figure out a way to fill it. So in that regard, as Emma was saying, I started working on my CLU designation, my CHFC, Chartered Financial Consultant designation, etc., because I knew that I needed that background, that financial background, to do the kind of work that I wanted to do for my clients. And what's really interesting, you know, we hate the thought of failures, but failures can be your friend. I've learned that too through some of the ladies that I spoke to, because in my instance, I graduated from high school on a Friday. On Monday, I decided I was going to go to college. Talk about planning, not. Anyway, so I went to the U of D, sat through the SATs. About 6 weeks later, I got my rejection letter. They said, after taking the exams, Fred, your math skills are fine, but you need some work on your English. So we need you to go to someplace else before you actually apply to U of D. Well, what was interesting, graduating from Christiana High School, I usually got straight A's in English and suffered through Algebra 1 4 times and finally passed it the last time. So here was an educational institution telling me that my math was fine, but I needed to work on my English. That was a big wake-up call for me. And what was really interesting is that several years later, there was this person who was, shall we say, very high up at the U of D, and I was attending an event in Wilmington at the Wilmington Club, where Mr. and Mrs. Copeland had just donated $1 million machine to the Christiana Healthcare. And this person who was high up, very high up, the highest you can get, I think, without naming names or titles. And she was working the room. She was going around, you know, to basically everybody in the room, and we're talking doctors, CPAs, attorneys, and me, saying, oh, are you a U of D alumni? And I saw her coming, I heard her talking, and I'm thinking to myself, well, this is going to be interesting if she asks me that question. And she didn't disappoint. She did ask me. And I said, well, thank you, but apparently the U of D didn't want me. And I said to her, it's okay, because I did all right. Don't worry. Yes, I did all right. I knocked it all out of the ballpark. And each and every one of you can do the same thing. I'm not special. The only thing that makes me special is I did the work. I understood what my unique abilities are. I understood what my perfect job was for me, because I love people. I love helping people. I love seeing people succeed. I did my inventory, so I knew what my personal attributes is. What do I bring to the table when I have a new client come into the office? And that special experience, because boots, allowed me to hear that first song of his. I'm still involved in music. And as Emma was saying, my band, by the way, the name of my band is called Club Fred. I want you to know it wasn't my idea. It's also spelled differently, C-L-U-B-P-H-R-E-D. We play around the area quite a bit. And we've helped to raise in excess of $5 million for 47 charities since 2004. So the other thing that I learned from the ladies that were successful in the book is something that I didn't give much credence to, which was I have found that the more I give of myself to other people, to other organizations, whatever, without thinking what I might get in return, something amazing happens. I get blindsided by something coming in the other direction that's positive and fabulous and had nothing to do with what I did over here to help somebody else. Anybody ever heard of that happening before? Let me tell you, there's something to that. It happens all the time with me. Just like Susan Hum, the costume designer of the David Letterman show. Through her, I got to meet the horn player, the trombone player, a guy by the name of Tom Bones Malone. Tom invented the Blues Brothers. Anybody here heard of the Blues Brothers? Okay, he invented it along with Belushi and Aykroyd. And he tells the story that when Belushi got this idea to get the band back together, that the producer of the show, his name will come to me in a moment. Anyway, when he heard that they're getting a band, he said, no, we're not going to do this. This is stupid. It's not even funny. We're not going to do it. Well, then about 6 months later, Bones tells the story. Lorne Michaels, that's his name. Lorne Michaels comes out and says, oh my gosh, we need to fill 3 minutes. 3 minutes. I'm brain dead. What can we do? And Belushi said, the Blues Brothers. So they did the performance when they weren't supposed to, because when preparedness meets opportunity, we have success. And as we know, the Blues Brothers exploded, and they've done a great job doing what they do. And from time to time, I will bring Bones, his name is Tom Bones Malone, and the rest of the horn section to Delaware to play with my band, Club Fred, and we'll do a benefit. As a matter of fact, we just did a benefit on October 29th at the Baby Grand to stop soldier suicide. And I had a gentleman, another one of my musical heroes, Felix Cavalieri from a band called The Rascals. It's a beautiful morning. How can I be sure? Groovin', good lovin'. I'm sure you've heard some of those songs. So all because, you know, I was trying to help other people. I kind of stepped in it, and without being obnoxious, things just started coming to me. And this is key, because when you know what your attributes are, when you do your balance sheet, you know what you're good at. When you see an opportunity, you know it's right for you, go for it. Why not? And if you are counseling other people out there, I would share all these things, because I've been not only listening to 62 women. Before I joined that awful company consulting, I actually supervised 60 women every day in the manufacture of small appliances. So I've been surrounded by women all my life. My mother was a woman. I'm married to a woman. I love women. I just want to give them the opportunity to do what I know that they can do. And I've seen them be successful. And it really ticks me off when I hear that women make 3/4 of the amount of money to do the same work that a man does. That's unacceptable. So there you have it. It is now 9:17. I would like to open up the floor for Q&A. But I must tell you, I only want easy questions. Don't give me hard ones.
Thank you so much, Fred. If anyone has a question, just feel free to unmute and jump in, or you can type it in the chat, whatever you are comfortable with.
If you don't give me a question, I'm going to have to come up with a story. I'll have another story for you. Warning, 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 warning. Questions.
Anyone?
So now you know what you're working on this weekend. You're each going to contact 5 or 10 of your friends to get them to tell you what your unique abilities are. You're going to design the perfect job for you, all the attributes. I like working with people. I don't like working with people. I want to be in front of a computer. I don't want to be in front of a computer. Whatever those things are that are unique to you, I want you to do those too. Do the inventory of your attributes. And then think about that special event. And it's uncanny. If you actually take the time to think about when you were a child, you know, between the ages of 10 and say 15, in that range, maybe a little bit sooner or later, there will be this one significant event that happened to you that really shaped you, but you never really gave it much thought. Just like I didn't give Boots Randolph much thought at all. But look what happened. It just exploded. And many of those people are those musical types are my clients. So that's almost nirvana, you know, it's for me anyway. So I want you to do your homework this weekend. It's 9:19. We still have 10 minutes. You could start now.
Thank
I'm
you
still
so
waiting
much,
for a
Fred.
question. There's no questions. It's up to you, Emma.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Fred. I'll definitely be doing my homework today or over the weekend. I think that's an amazing exercise. And it starts with us, right? We have to do the work and we can only go up from there. So I think this is excellent. I just posted the SHRM and HRCI credit codes for today's session. Make sure you copy those down and get some credit for coming today. But I do encourage you to follow up and do the activities that Fred outlined for us today. Shannon says there is a question above the code. Oh, we missed a question from Dan Blue.
I was just going to say that. Dan, thank you, Dan. Of the women you interviewed, any childhood special events jump out? Just that one crushing event where that 8-year-old girl was invaded by the police to arrest her mother. You know, can you imagine being that child and suddenly your mother is taken out in handcuffs? What would that do to you? And there were some other minor things, but that one just pegged the meter when I heard that one, you know? And you know, that's the other thing. We never know what other people have gone through in their lifetime to get where they are today. And by opening up a conversation, you find out amazing things. And that's one of the wonderful things I like about my job, because I get to ask incredible questions about people, because I need to know these things if I'm going to help them financially. And some of the experiences that I have come across with some other people. Yesterday, I had a lady in my office for the first time ever. Her husband just died of COVID. And they had nothing. I should say they had no wills, no trusts, you know, just a massive 401k plan that she was instructed had to be moved now. So she was not ready. She was not prepared, but we're spoon feeding her now. So she's going to be okay. She's going to be okay. Thank you, everyone. I so enjoyed being with you today. I hope you got, Sunday. Talk to me Sunday.
Actually, I'm called Annabella. I have a question, like if you are in an organization where you are working as a woman and you're trying your best to make sure you add value into that organization, but everything you do, they see it as a problem and they don't look at you as if you're doing much. What can you do as an employee in that organization?
Ooh, let's see, we only have just a couple minutes. That's good for a 30-minute chat back and forth, but I'll give you my best shot, okay?
Okay, thank you.
First of all, that's why I had a problem being an employee. Because I stated earlier, you know, they were taking credit for my ideas. I was never quite good enough, yada, yada, all those things. So finally I had to say, I don't belong here. That's a hint. If they don't value you, if they don't appreciate you, and certainly if you've done your homework where you know that you have unique abilities that could really propel that organization forward, and they're not listening, move on, find something else. And if you've done the attributes of the perfect job, you will know exactly where you're going to next time.
Okay.
Maybe not exactly, but you're going to have a good idea of what you're looking for, as opposed to, well, there's 10 jobs, which one's right for me? Well, if you don't know what your own attributes are, what's the point? Why go through that aggravation when you could do that inventory and then figure out, oh, job number 6 meets most of my criteria? That's for me. Because when you come in, you know, the old cliche, when you know, you fear no man or woman. That's what I would suggest. And your name's not Sunday, that's the day of the week, right?
That's my husband's name.
Oh, that's your husband. Oh, okay, nice. Okay. Sunday. And then your children are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Oh, you've never heard that before? Yeah, right.
No.
Okay.
I've heard that, but the children doesn't bear Mondays.
Oh, I see. Okay. That
Yeah.
was an excellent question. That really, really was. I can't tell you that. That was terrific. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? I can hear you breathing. Well, thanks, everybody. It's 9:24. Go do your homework and then send me an email that you've succeeded beyond your wildest dreams, because I can almost guarantee you it will happen.
Excellent.
So-
Thank
And you
you
know
so
the old
much,
cliche, if it's to be, it's up to me. You know, nobody's going to hold a gun to your head. Nobody's going to make you do this homework. You got to do it. Thank you, Emma.